Hi everyone, welcome back to Rona is Reading. This is going to be my wrap-up for November. I read 15 books last month, again with a lot of manga as I was finishing up Land of the Lustrous. Shout out Storygraph. Alrighty, let's jump into it. The first book that I read this month was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I wanted something kind of outdoorsy for a camping trip that I went on, and this was the perfect book for that. It is a literary thriller set at a summer camp when a camper and the daughter of the camp's owners goes missing. The ensuing investigation uncovers secrets of the nearby small town and about Barbara's older brother who went missing over a decade ago and was never found. This book was such a page-turner for me. For the amount of characters and timelines this book has, it is remarkably well-paced. I loved the imagery, and the setting of the summer camp was pretty perfect, especially for the discussion of youth and youngness in general here. This book does a great job of kind of having a shadow protagonist, this character who's far more pivotal to the story than anyone lets on, even the author. Their presence kind of functions as a plot twist. So many thrillers pull that off by lying to the reader, but this one manages it pretty honestly, and I just had a really good time with it. The song I chose for this book was On the Mountain Tall by the Oh Hellos. And I gave it 5 stars. A lot of 5 stars this month, actually, so that's great. The next book I read was the most recent book in the Singing Hills cycle, which was A Mouthful of Dust by Nevo. I listened to this on audiobook because I absolutely love the narrator for these. And, Nevo has done it again. This is like exhibit number 15 of why she's quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. The Singing Hills Saga is a fantasy novella series that can be read in any order, following the cleric Chi as they travel to bring stories back to Singing Hills, a vast story archive. This book follows Chi and their Hoopoe companion traveling to a village to learn about the famine that happened there years ago. What follows is a discussion of desperation, money, sacrifice, trickery, and of course, some dust. This series is really the gold standard for what a novella can do for me. Each is a full story, a discussion, and the fantasy elements within are great. Chi, as a main character, is also just wonderful to travel alongside. Their reflections on stories and propensity to wind up as a part of them are just as much of a delight to read about as the world they're traveling through. Yeah, I gave this one 4.5 stars. It's Singing Hills. I'm not gonna rate it bad. The song I chose for this one was Empty by Metric. Next up, I read what I'd roughly call the second act of Land of the Lustrous, volumes 6 through 9. I gave these all in the range of 3 to 4 stars. We are really expanding in this section more on the mystery and intrigue in this world that this series is set in. Reading these after publication, I feel like they definitely suffer pacing-wise from being published weekly, and I kind of wish that certain characters growing more intelligent also coincided with more suspicion and reflection on certain other characters. However, I love the further exploration of the cast. Ghost, in particular, here is a really fun character to bounce Phosphofolite off of. So, pacing-wise, not the strongest, but I had a good time. I had a good time with this series overall. The songs I chose for this were Reckless by St. Vincent and Avalanche Alley and High Ticket Attractions, both by a band whose name I'm not sure if I should say on YouTube. Next up, I read Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This was a reread for me and something I read as part of my writing syllabus for this fall. Did I think this book started in 2025 and not 2024, hence starting my reread late? I don't know why you suggested that. That's definitely not what happened. This book follows Lauren Olamina, a teenager living in a sort of precariously sheltered community in California in the year 2024. She believes that God is change, and people shape God by adapting. Her world is a harsh climate dystopia of water shortages and hard decisions, so it really makes sense that she sees the world the way she does, and she has a lot of really, really brilliant insights about it. This book is one of the most prescient and considered books on the future that I've ever read, and at its center is that seed of hope. God is change. It's dark and scary as hell and goes some really, really, messed up places without giving up that seed of hope and always saying, no, we can work to make a better future. We just have to work to make a better future. Sower does an excellent job of displaying systemic problems as well. I did knock off half a star for that age gap, TM, which was worse to read than I remembered, but I am hoping will be addressed in the sequel. This was also a fun read alongside Land of the Lustrous, which is a series that's arguably about characters fighting for the ability to change in a very stagnating world. I like it when the books I read thematically interweave like that. The song I chose for this one was Everything Stays from Adventure Time. Next, I read What's Wrong, a graphic novel by Erin Williams. This was a creatively illustrated nonfiction book following the authors and 4 other interviewees' stories of chronic pain, illness, and medical systems that have failed them. This book was really insightful and kind of used individual stories to approach systemic issues entangled in the American medical system and the topic of advocating for more inclusive medical systems. I feel like this book did a good job of talking about alternate medicines and treatments without going full anti-science, which is a tough line to tread. The pairing of the illustrations with all of the text was really powerful as well, and gave me some insights for learning about disability in general. The song I chose for this one was How to Be Sick by Andrea Gibson. Next up, for my Discord book club, I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I do, at the start here, have to just confirm how good of a book club book this is. We were talking the entire time, nonstop, about various different things that happen in this book, and while we do have a pretty verbose book club, that isn't often the case that we have that much to talk about. Anyways, Yellowface is about June Hayward, and it's about publishing. When June sees her quote-unquote friend Athena Liu die, she uses that opportunity to steal her unfinished manuscript. What follows is a look inside a publishing villain arc, which I'm sure everyone could see at least once a month if they followed enough book people and publishers online. Once a year, maybe, if we're only paying attention to the large authors. This book is kind of infuriating in the best way, as June's publishing trajectory brings up discussions of own voices stories and the cost of being like gold star diverse voice in an industry that's still very, very predominantly white and rife with scandal. Kuang has a great portrayal of Twitter discourse, rest in piss Twitter, and brings out so many commonplace issues in publishing and the book world. Though I wish this book did a better job of talking about financial backgrounds. We talk about a ton of various systemic inequalities in publishing. Obviously, closest to the forefront is Own Voices stories and AIPI voices. But we never really touch on how hard it is to financially get your foot in the door in publishing, which is a huge ongoing issue. I just, found it weird that Kuang does such a good job talking about so many other subjects, and that's barely mentioned at all, or, royalties are mentioned and not, economic backgrounds. Oh, I also really enjoyed just how much complicated history was in June and Athena's friendship. That was really, really interesting to unravel as the plot kept moving forward. I gave this book 4 stars, and for the song, I picked Jealousy, Jealousy by Olivia Rodrigo. Next up, I finished the roughly final arc of Land of the Lustrous. This was volumes 10 through 13. Everything comes together about how I was expecting it to. I will try my best to talk about this low spoilers, but I will put a timestamp somewhere on screen in case you want to skip this section. I really enjoyed seeing the resolutions, or intentional lack thereof, to a lot of the through lines of this series. This world is really, really fascinating to me, so it was cool to see it kind of come to a close. It was very emotionally poignant and hopeful in its ending, while still keeping to the idea that everything changes, it needs to change, stagnation is bad, which is very much what I feel it's trying to hammer home. And I did rate all of the books in this section between 3.5 and 4.5 stars. I just have a lot more concrete thoughts about my criticisms for this arc. It's kind of baffling to me that we had a more or less twist villain here. Everyone knew, it seemed, but no one really said it. And we just kind of accept their plan as good, or at least as, what's going to happen unchallenged. Little nuance added. This kind of stems from what I was saying from the previous arc of us being told that certain characters are getting more intelligent, and that not really corresponding as much to on-page introspection or analysis. Book smarts, maybe. And my biggest criticism for this series overall is that I feel like it leans a little uncomfortably into trauma as character development. Sure, characters and people go through traumatic events regularly, and that shapes their personalities, right? I put that in my own writing. However, that's not the only thing that can when I read a story like this that's relying so hard on gut-punching both the reader and the characters, I kind of start to wonder if my rating is only as high as it is because I'm suffering alongside the characters. Again, like, I'm not saying you can't write dark stories. I'm just saying that down that road lies the dangerous line into emotionally cheap storytelling. And I'm really not sure where I land on that for Land of the Lustrous. Last thing, small note, Waragot, or however I pronounce that. Hey, why would you write a character arc that's so love-bomby and creepy boyfriend and abuse-coded only to, like, not address it? I'm concerned by how dropped that plotline was. The songs I chose for this were Destroyer by Phantogram, Remember You, Omnichord, which is the Trillion cover, and Dreams by the Cranberries. Next up was a book I've been playing library tag with for a very long time, Clariel by Garth Nix. This is the fourth book in the Old Kingdom series. It's something of a prequel to the prior books. It's set in the capital city of Belisare, mostly, in an era of prosperity and safety that is leading important people to forget about the undead threats that kind of lurk in this world. Our main character here is Clariel, a girl who doesn't want to be in the city, is getting pushed around by her parents and almost everyone else she meets. She wants to be in the forest. She really wants to be in the forest. I think this story adds just a ton to the world of the Old Kingdom, and honestly, I might like it more than Sabriel after having sat on it for about a week. Clariel is a delight as a character and has a super strong personality. I might like her more than Sabriel, even if I don't like her book more than Sabriel is such a good book. Belle is great too as a companion character. I really like the Eros representation here and really related to Clary's annoyance at, well, every boy for assuming her friendship was like a budding romance waiting to happen. Oh boy, I've been there. That plot twist sent me into an emotional tailspin for a second, but in retrospect, it really works. Roll the emotional roller coaster. Yeah, I'm fine. Honestly, the thing that really holds back this series is, like, its insistence on, or rather, like, inability to get away from, like, powerful bloodlines as a trope. Having just reread The Hobbit, I see where it comes from. However, like, there's a huge history of this in British-inspired fantasy, and that doesn't take away from, like, the eugenics implications of the trope. And past about the 2000s, I want some sort of conversation around that in a book that uses this sort of thing as world building. Again, there's other much more well-known fantasy series that do this, but Old Kingdom is the one that hurts me the most, because I would like it so much more if it didn't do this. The song I chose for this book was Annabelle by Sir Chloe. The last book I read this month was No More Heroes by Michelle Kahn. I read this book to fill the gender fluid and aro ace character space on my book bingo. Geez, I did not expect that to be so hard, to find a character who canonically shares my identity. This was a NaNoWriMo, also rest in piss, project from 2014, so while I didn't love it, I'm not gonna necessarily bash on it too much here. It's kind of obscure and an independent project. No More Heroes follows a cast of vigilantes, people with superpowers, as they take down a group of other vigilantes who are stealing people's superpowers. The premise really reminded me of Unordinary, and I love Unordinary, so I did have a really nice time reading this, even if it didn't end up being my favorite thing in the world. Honestly, my biggest gripe with this book was the massive cast. It just felt like there was too much going on. So many scenes of characters just catching other characters up on information they gathered. The prose was also on the weaker side, but yeah, I liked it. It's a superhero romp. I read it on a, cloudy, quiet day. It was a nice time. I did give this book 2 stars, though. The song I picked for this was Life Will Change by Lynn from the Persona 5 soundtrack. That's about the vibe. That's everything I read this month. Next month, I'm just hoping to finish up a couple of books to fill in slots in reading challenges, enjoy the colder weather, and get some things ready for 2026. Thank you for everyone who made it to the end. As a reward, have some cat propaganda. Make sure to drop a like or leave a comment with your favorite book or video game from November. It really does help me out. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.